number one is I think we should be congratulating the federal government here. You know, it's an unprecedented bill, but I think also it's worth thinking about the fact that this bill, in my mind, is the first funding bill that really does have at its heart some basic asset management principles. Now, I know, Jack mentioned before the Surface Transportation Bill, so the Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act, a few years ago now had requirements for asset management plans, and all of the subrecipients delivered on that, and we've seen lots of variance in the quality of those plans, of course, in terms of those who've paid lip service to it and those who've actually used it as an opportunity to improve their asset management practices. But I think with IIJA, what we've seen here is a bill that really focuses on some value drivers for infrastructure. It focuses on how do we make both regions and the nation as a whole more competitive. So it's thinking about that sort of economic value. It's thinking about the societal value through well-being, through equity. That's a very important consideration within IIJA. And then, as Sita said before, it's also that long-term value. So we've now got an increased focus on climate resilience, on sustainability. Hugely important, not just because we want to improve the quality of our built environment and our natural surroundings, but we also need that in order to be more competitive on the international landscape. I think it's also just picking up what Dan said earlier about the sprinkling of funding across assets. That of course is going to happen. I'd like to think that we're starting to move away from that a little bit with some of the allocations of funding here. We're certainly seeing investments in assets sort of very specifically, almost in their own right. We're seeing investments in systems of assets. I think we're also somewhat uniquely, maybe for the first time, starting to see a need to think about systems of systems. So as we think about the whole EV, electric vehicle market, that's not just improving transportation, but that's improving the national electricity grid. It's improving communications and everything else that will enable us to manage those assets. So we've started to get these asset crossovers, which we've not really seen so much in the past. There's still a lot to do. The American Society of Civil Engineers talked about a $2.5 trillion backlog infrastructure deficit. That's a little bit more than what we've got in this bill, for sure. There was a report out, I think it was last year, that talked about a $4.5 trillion to convert the US energy grid. I mean, that's, again, a huge number. And I think just to pick up on another comment that Dan said earlier, we talk about shovel-ready projects all the time, and that's what gets people back to work, gets people busy, starts to have a positive impact on the economy, of course. But this bill in particular, given the size of it, given the longevity of it, we need to be thinking not just about shovel-ready, but planning-ready projects. We need those planning-ready projects to continue that sustained pull out of any economic depression we're in. And then using that to really sort of guide the light of where we go next. And I think at the heart of that, to really make that successful, to really ensure that what we're investing in meets those value drivers I mentioned before, but we've got a very clear plan for how we do that efficiently. We really should be thinking more closely about how we adopt asset management, not just in the individual departments, as Jack said, but more so on a state and national level, building in those infrastructure plans